chills. Really, thanks so much, guys. I mean, who wants to speak after that? Seriously. Yeah. All right, I drove all this way. Might as well do something. You have a beautiful voice, by the way, singing in my ear back there. Yeah, she has a beautiful voice. Yeah. I suppose I should start my talk. Good morning, Unity on Cape Cod. Thank you for having me. My name's Jackie Woodside. Many of you know me, and I've been here many, many times before. Tony is away, as you know. His daughter got married in California this weekend, so he's away in California. So that song was just so great. Actually, we didn't coordinate, but did you hear that piece in my meditation about, like, no matter what challenges you're facing, kind of bringing in that all is well, and then they just said no matter what you're facing, you always have a rainbow overhead. It was kind of the same theme, and that's really my theme of my talk today, finding serenity in unexpected places. You know, we could all use a little bit more serenity with what's happening in our world today. Have you noticed? So finding serenity in unexpected places, I think, is in fact a spiritual practice. We are called as spiritual beings having a human experience to continue to grow in our ability to live in serenity. So I noticed this thing. I wonder if you've noticed it as well. Last February, we had quite a storm, and during one of the lulls in the storm, I took my puppy out and went for a walk with my dog, and I was walking around. It was just magical. It was so beautiful. Yes, there was like snow everywhere, but it's like it's on the trees, and it was just light. It was just so beautiful. So I walked down, and my neighbor Jim, the guy who always has the perfect lawn and the perfect driveway, he's out running his snowblower already because, you know, that's what he does because he always has the perfect lawn. And I was like, hey, Jim, how you doing? He's like, oh, you know, I can't believe this nor'easter, and oh, there's weather, and I'm going to be running a snowblower. And I was like, okay, it's beautiful. Okay, good, see ya. And then I walked down another couple of blocks, and there's a new neighbor, and he was out shoveling. I hadn't met him before. I was like, hey, welcome to the neighborhood. This is my dog, Zozo. I'm Jackie. It's so nice to meet you. How's the new house? He's like, well, I wish I would have thought about the winter when I bought it. Look at the slope on this driveway. It's like, okay, welcome to the neighborhood. And then I walked just a couple of houses, and my friend Chris is out with his new little puppy, Golden Doodle. He's just an adorable little thing. And I was like, Chris, the puppy, oh my God, she's so cute. And you're, how's it going? Oh, this isn't very good puppy weather. It's like, okay then. And then in July, hey, wow, isn't this gorgeous? Oh, it's so hot. Right? So in February, I want to be like, it is February in New England. Right? If it was like July and February, we'd know there was something wrong, right? It's February in New England and it's snowing. This is not a major revelation. It's hot and it's July. This is not going to make news, right? Look at how we use our minds. Look at how we use our minds. You know, there was laughter of recognition, right? Because we all do that. Rah, 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 rah. About this or that or the next thing. But look at how we are using our minds. I am really struck with, that we are here committed as spiritual people in awakening to our divinity, and yet that's what we're doing. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of the Unity movement, said, words are seeds. When dropped into the spiritual substance, produce after their kind. Isn't that powerful? Words are seeds. When dropped into the invisible spiritual substance, produce after their kind. In other words, how you speak is how you are creating your world. But to go even a step below that, how you think is what creates how you speak. Right? So, finding serenity in unexpected places is an interesting thought, because the place that I want to think about with you today is actually finding serenity in your own mind. Oh crap, that was not what you wanted to hear about today, was it? Because until we can find serenity in the storms of our lives, the literal ones here in New England and the figurative ones that are in our minds, the financial and the health and the relationships and the house and then. Until we can find serenity within our own mind, we will never truly know freedom. We will never truly know peace. And we will never grow into the fullness of our Christ consciousness. You know, maybe that sounds like an unusual phrase that I said just a minute ago. Look at how they're using their mind. Maybe you're like, well, what do you mean using my mind? I don't use my mind. I just have my mind. Kind of like my vision. I don't really use my vision. I just wake up and it's there, or my hearing or balance. I don't use my balance. I just have my balance. I don't use my mind. I just have my mind. You cannot relate to mind in that way. Mind is everything. The Greek philosopher Aristotle said, the energy of mind is the essence of life. The energy of mind, and another interpretation of that, is the workings of the mind, is the essence of your life. Mind is everything. So you cannot be casual about how you use your mind. In fact, A Course in Miracles says, you may think that you're responsible for what you do, but not for what you think. How many of you think that? Right? Oh, I can't help it. It's just the way I think. Right? You may think you're responsible for what you do, but not for what you think. The truth is, you are responsible for what you think because it is only at this level that you can exercise choice. What you do comes from what you think. And I would add to that, what you do comes from what you think and what you feel and what you believe. Right? So you are responsible for your inner world. So perhaps the most unexpected place that you can find serenity, in fact, I would go so far as to say the only place that you can find serenity is within your own consciousness, within your own thoughts, within your own beliefs. You know, paying attention to, training and disciplining how you use your mind, you can live in the consciousness of peace. But you can't be casual about it. Life is an ongoing opportunity for you to develop what I call conditioned consciousness. Conditioned consciousness. Unconditioned consciousness is just the human mind run amok. It's like those, the conversations I had at the beginning here. It's this constant barrage of opinions and judgments and complaints and projections and, worries and perceptions. It's just all over the place. The weather's too hot, it's too cold, it's too humid. The line is too long, the service is too slow, everything's too expensive, inflation is bad. I can't trust people, I have to be careful. I'd better not care too much. I don't want to get hurt. Ew. That is unconditioned consciousness, isn't it? So rather than living with a litany of judgments and complaints, our calling as spiritual people committed to awakening is to use every opportunity to discipline the mind in service of life, in service of your growth, expansion, and what I call being your God self on earth. I like to use God as a verb. Are you Godding on earth? Are you Godding today? Right? Yeah, borrow it, steal it. You don't even have to cite me. Right? But you can't do that with unconditioned consciousness. Unconditioned consciousness means you complain about snow in February and heat in July. That is unconditioned consciousness. I was at the dog park with a bunch of my friends the other day, and I went for a walk to do the loop, we say. It's at a little hiking place, with one of my friends. And because I really pay attention to conditioning my consciousness, I noticed that as we started walking, the first 3 things that came to mind to share with her were complaints. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to even hold those as complaints in my own energy field. So I didn't really know what else to talk about, so I just talked about how beautiful the leaves were and how cute our dogs were. And that led us into a whole different vibration of conversation. That is conditioning your consciousness. It's seeing, oh, there it goes again. There it goes again. How you condition your consciousness is by choosing what to focus on. Walking down the trail, complaining about my sister. Oh, God, this is live streamed. Right? No, not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Why? Because I have choice. I know, I hate that this is live streamed. Cut that out. So how you condition your consciousness is by choosing what you're going to focus on. So you might have noticed, lately I've been noticing my tendency towards frustration, towards judgment, towards impatience, just simple things. Like when I drop something, like, oh God, you're so stupid. Or when the dog is out back and she wraps herself around the tree, and she's on her long lead and then she wraps herself. I'm like, oh God, I got to go get the dog again. But here's the thing. It's just simple, stupid stuff. But when simple little things add up over time, it becomes a way of being. It becomes unconditioned consciousness. And when that happens, there's no freedom. There's no peace. There's no serenity. Now, I've been told, perhaps, that I'm a tad impatient before, but I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it because I hadn't risen in consciousness enough to raise my awareness to that level. Now I see it everywhere. Just like layers of the onion getting peeled off, as you stay in the practice of conditioning your consciousness, as you keep paying attention, the layers of the onion will be removed and you'll see yourself more fully. You'll see yourself more clearly. And every time you interrupt the ego's tendency to see the problem, right? Or to express the complaint, or to engage in judgment like I just did, or be impatient, you begin to find serenity in unexpected places. That's all it takes, is to interrupt, just for a minute, just interrupt the habitual patterning of your mind. I want you to take a moment now to just notice where you have conditioned your consciousness, where you're not run amok by your ego. You are succeeding far more than you give yourself credit for. You really are. You are kind to people. You have pleasant exchanges in the grocery store line. You're patient. You are kind. You are generous. You give to this church and to your community and to your family. You smile at strangers. You pay attention to lifting the vibe. You express gratitude for simple things. We sang about that in today our affirmation, finding joy in simple things. You have grown into a loving, faithful, caring steward. You have done that. You taste the sweet reprieve of disciplining your mind so that you can live with compassion and wisdom and love. That's what we're here to do. As you do this, you come to recognize that there is an enormity to your soul that's bigger than these day-to-day petty complaints. The question is, which world do you want to live in? The physical seen world of the physicality, the denseness of that physicality, or in the beauty of the unseen, the consciousness, the energy, the vibration that God is and that we are? The more you discipline yourself to pay attention to the blessings, the more you find serenity in your own mind. So many people today are just trapped in all kinds of messiness, right? Addictions and depression, suicide rates, overdose rates, just, crazy, going through the roof, because they're using their mind in the wrong way. In fact, for the most part, they don't even know that they have any choice in how to use their mind. They don't even recognize this whole conversation that we're having right now, that you can actually condition your mind to serve you at a higher level. But at every moment, you have a choice to determine how will you use your mind. Because the truth is, you are always being lived by something. You're always being lived by something. You're either being lived by faith or fear, separation or oneness, unconditional love, acceptance or judgment and criticism, satisfaction or complaint, beauty or it's all going wrong. You are always, in every moment, being lived by something. You recognize that? You guys with me? Am I talking to myself up here? Yo-yo? Yeah. We're doing good? All right, good. So fundamentally what I am talking about here, I'll be curious what you think of this, really interesting notion. What I am talking about here is a process of healing and recovery. Healing and recovery. What are you recovering from? Your addiction to your own ego. Your addiction to your own ego. Maybe you thought that you've made it through life without the tentacles of addiction finding its way into your life. Maybe you got through life without being addicted to alcohol or weed, or you don't use substances or sugar or screen time. Maybe you screen-sucking behavior or porn. You're like, oh, no, I did that, so I made it. Well, addiction is defined by doing the same behavior over and over and over again, even when it causes you harm. How many of you see that the way that you use your mind and emotions repeatedly over and over again sometimes causes you harm? And yet you feel powerless to change it. Aren't you glad you came to church this morning? Step 1 of Ego Addicts Anonymous. We admitted we were powerless over the ego and that our lives have become unmanageable. Sign me up, right? Sign me up. If you are chronically experiencing worry, frustration, impatience, if you have irrational upsets or relational dramas, if you are judging and criticizing yourself or other people, if you are being lived by faith more than fear, then you are addicted to the ego. We're all recovering from our addiction to the ego. It's just that's what our spiritual path really is. Finding the truth of our divinity. And this expression of our addiction to the ego kind of has two paths. One of them is outer, where you're like being right and being justified in your anger and getting your way, defending your point of view, right? Kind of the outer expression. And then the other one is more inner. Self-criticism, playing small, not being willing to take risks. Because, what if I fail? What'll they think of me? Feeling like you don't matter. You're not good enough. Somebody might find out. All of those outer and inner expressions of the ego are what get in the way of you finding serenity in your own mind. These are the things that limit and restrict our lives, and without disciplining our mind, like a practice of discipline, you will never know serenity. So I want to talk to you guys with me on this. It's so cool, isn't it? Yeah. Each time you subjugate your ego, subjugate the ego means putting it down. So each time you subjugate the ego to the Christ consciousness within you, you recover a little bit more from your addiction to the ego. Like you can't go like cold turkey, like I'm just not going to do the ego any longer. Right? You can't do that. It's like you got to learn to kind of navigate with it. But with a lot of process addictions, like addiction to foods or addiction to sex or addiction to relationships, people have gone through recovery processes with that. It's not that you remove yourself fully from it, it's that you learn to navigate it in a higher and higher order, in a more mature, sophisticated, helpful way. That's what I'm talking about. Your relationship with the design, the human design, really. The ego is part of the human design. I think it's a design flaw, personally. Yeah, I can't wait till someday I'll be chatting with God, and maybe I should do it now, and just be like, that was a design flaw. Why do we have the ego? But it really is, we took human form, and the ego is part of our human expression. And I really believe that our purpose on earth is to grow in consciousness, to shed the ego, grow in consciousness back to the divinity from which we came before we die. You don't have to wait to go back to your divinity after you cross the pearly gates. No, right here, right now. How do you do that? By shedding the tentacles of the ego that it has on your divinity. You are here, a divine expression of God. That's who you are. I know, I don't feel like it all the time either. Sometimes I like, who, you? Are you kidding? No, really, I am here as a divine expression of God. Let's say that together. I am here as a divine expression of God. Doesn't that feel better than like you're such a loser? Right? Thank you. That is why we are here, to grow in consciousness back to the divinity from which we came. Just shedding the ego. In some ways, all the other stuff that you do doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Do you know what Einstein penned on his deathbed? Yeah. You want to tell me? Oh, okay. It's the coolest thing, isn't it? You want it to just be... Let's not tell them. Let's just keep it between you and I. Yeah. On his deathbed, Einstein penned, "I want to know the mind of God. Everything else is just the details." Isn't that crazy? I want to know the mind of God. Everything else, the house, the car, the job, the money, the all the stuff that we get all caught up about, is just the details. I want to know just the details, the busyness, the mia. What's the minutia? The minutia of life. Well, it's not really minutia. I mean, I care a lot about, and this is where we get in it, right? It's like, well, does that mean my spouse isn't important and I can't parent myself? No, it means you do all of that in Christ consciousness. You show up as a different human being because you are committed to finding serenity in the corners of your mind. So let me give you just 3 simple ways to kind of do this better. And the potential pitfall here is that you're going to listen to these 3 simple ways like, Jackie, I know that already. What's the 5th unity principle? It's not enough to know the truth. You must demonstrate truth principle in your life. So what I'm about to tell you, I know you know this already. That's not why I'm talking to you about it. I'm talking to you about it because if you're not demonstrating this as your day-to-day experience and way of being, then there's room for growth. Okay? So the first one is simply meditation. Be like, well, why are you talking about meditation at a Unity Church? We meditate every Sunday. Because there's 6 days between Sundays. Do you know that the latest neuroscience research has shown that 1 minute of meditation done several times a day is the neurological equivalent benefit as 20 minutes of seated meditation? 1 minute. So people are like, oh, I don't have the time. 1 minute. Right? A minute when you first get up. A minute when you get into your car if you're driving to work or the grocery store or wherever you drive. You get into the car, that's your trigger. 1 minute. Set your timer. Meditate. So, right, so people are like, oh, I don't have time. 1 minute. Several times a day. Number 2, people are like, oh, I tried that, Jackie. I just can't quiet my mind. That is meditation. Of course you can't quiet your mind. When you meditate, you actually realize what a hot mess your mind is. It's like, oh, this is what she was talking about. Of course you can't quiet your mind, especially if you are a new meditator. So what you do for that minute is you notice what a hot mess your mind is. And then you go back to your breath. And you get to 2. I got to get going. What does she mean 1 minute several times a day? I can't do that, right? You'll notice the low-level irritation and hurriedness and I can't, and it's too hard, and because you don't have neural pathways cultivated for inner peace yet. How do you develop neural pathways for inner peace? 1 minute of meditation several times a day. Just count your breath. Or repeat a mantra. Peace in, stress out. Peace be still. Just peace, love, God, spirit. I don't care what your mantra is. Choose a word that elevates you, a word that brings you peace. And say it to yourself on each breath for a minute. And I promise you, you can't do it. You won't be able to do it. You'll get to like 4 if you're anything like me and be like, just come back to your breath. That is meditation. That's all that it is. So people have these confused notions that meditation means like, for some reason, you sit down and all of a sudden your head goes quiet. No, it doesn't. Meditation is paying attention to the fact that your head is not quiet. And then paying attention to what is actually going on in there. You know, when I first started meditating about 20 years ago, I was treated for long-term chronic depression over the course of my life. And so I always identified as I'm kind of a depressive. You know, I'm just not the life of the party. I'm kind of a depressive. But when I started meditating, I actually realized I'm kind of anxious. You know, these anxious thoughts. I have all these worries that popped up in my consciousness. Like, what the hell is that? I thought I was this. Now I'm both. Ah! And guess what? Now I'm neither. No longer on medication. I'm peaceful, I'm serene, and I meditate several times a day for 1 minute. And then sometimes for 20 minutes. And it's delightful. Now I know I'm a hot mess. It just doesn't bother me any longer. Thank you. This second piece, principle, truth, that I'm going to give you is going to be really helpful after you go and apply the first one. Because when you apply the first one, you're going to recognize what hot mess you are as well. So the second tenet I'm going to teach to you today is so important, and it is simply this. Do not believe everything you think. Your thoughts are not true. They're not true. But when you think they're true, then they kind of congeal into something called a belief. And then when it becomes a belief, you carry that forward and it creates a perception. And when you have perceptions, that's how you determine your actions. And then you wonder, why is my life such a mess? It's because you believed things that you were thinking that are simply not true. Things like, I can't, I'm not, what will they think, I might fail, I promise you, you're going to have those thoughts for a long time, maybe forever. I can see myself now sitting in the nursing home of the day hall of the nursing home, teaching empowerment classes, worried that what people are going to think of me. Yeah, I just won't care what they think of me. So be careful not to believe everything you think. Your thoughts are not true. They are patterns of neurons firing over habituated times that you've given emotion to, and that's become like a way of being. Your thoughts are not true. Even that thought is not true. Then that leads us down a rabbit hole, but we're not going to go there. So the more that you can separate yourself from like, oh, that's an interesting thought. That's what I do all the time now, because I still have low vibration thoughts. I just don't care that I have them. I have disempowering thoughts. I just don't give them power. So I can see the thought, and then I can center myself in the truth of who I am. And who are we? We are the light of God expressing. We are the divine. I am God, Godding on earth. It's a little blasphemous, but if God is omnipotent, omnipresent, then God is here and there in each and every one of us. So when we remember that, when we come back to the truth of who we are, then all of that yamma, just don't believe it. Find it like the local comedy. You've been saying that to yourself since you were 12, for God's sakes. Can't you do any better than that? I know you can. So it's like, oh, there it is again. That's the one that she said isn't true. Actually, all of them aren't true. Given that none of them are true, choose the ones that are going to empower you. Choose the ones that you want to cultivate into your character and into your belief system and into your way of being and into your habits. Choose the ones that will express your Christ consciousness, your God self on earth. And those are thoughts like, of course I can. Or maybe I'm going to fail, but who cares? It'll be a fun ride. It's like worth getting up for. I got to do something with my life. Right? Yes, they're going to judge me, but they're going to judge me anyway. Stand up and deliver. Right? And then the last one. You're going to need this too. Practicing, and again, I know you know this, practicing the spiritual principles of acceptance and surrender. And I think people sometimes confuse exactly what they mean. So I want to talk about it in this context of finding serenity in unexpected places. You will only find serenity in your life and in your heart and in your mind when you can practice acceptance and surrender of all circumstances. Acceptance is, this happened. Fill in the blank, whatever the this is. This happened. And surrender means, and there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do about the fact that it happened. So just to take an example, so suppose you just got very quickly laid off. You weren't expecting it. I got laid off. So acceptance is, I got laid off. And surrender is, and I can't do anything about the fact that I got laid off. My being pissed off, my being worried, my being judgmental of all, that's not going to make any difference. In fact, it will have the impact of having your executive functioning frontal lobes shut down. So then you can't take the proper action, because when I say there's nothing you can do about it, I don't mean sit on your hands and hope for good. There are actions that you want to take, but there's nothing you can do about the fact that it happened. So acceptance is, it happened, and surrender is, I can't make it unhappen. Right? I can't make it unhappen, but then, in that clarity of mind, you can say, oh, but what am I going to do about it? Who do I want to be in the face of it? That's where you begin to develop power and to know peace. You know, as you begin to practice these principles and to actually live like, my thoughts aren't true, wait, is that one true? Is that one empower me? Is not empower me? You might feel a little crazy. It's a little crazy making to really start paying attention to what's going on in here. And then you add your emotions to it. It's just a hot mess. It's a lot to deal with. A colleague and friend of mine, Michael Meerdad, wrote a book that's called You're Not Going Crazy, You're Just Waking Up. So it does feel a little crazy making. But you're not crazy. You are showing dominion over the ego. You are allowing your Christ consciousness to pluck the tentacles of the ego addiction out of your being so that you can live with clarity and peace. You're conditioning your mind. That is how you do it. So remember that it is you that is choosing to discipline your mind. It is you. You are being lived by a higher purpose and a calling to grow in consciousness. That's what you're here for. And you know what? You're doing great. You're doing marvelously. Look at you. You are growing. You are becoming more loving, more peaceful, more centered. You are making a difference in the unity consciousness of our world. You are doing that. You are the only one that can bring serenity to your mind, and you are not powerless over your thinking mind. I want to borrow from the Apostle Paul, Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You can show dominion over your mind and your emotions through the power of your Christ consciousness, living as your God self on earth, showing dominion over the crazy hot mess that our minds can sometimes be. Thanks for being with me today.
You have been watching the message from our Sunday celebration service here at Unity on Cape Cod, providing a positive path for spiritual living. Please join us every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. at 147 Walton Ave, Hyannis, Mass., and visit us online at unityoncapecod.org. This video was made possible in part through a grant from Unity Worldwide Ministries and the Templeton Foundation.